nation's capital, on the Mall, 1999, only here for a few more moments. Wolf Blitzer, what's it like?
Bernie, I've been covering Washington for about 20 years, and you and Judy, of course, have covered this city, and we've seen a lot of events here on the Washington Mall, along the reflecting pool, between the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, all the way up to Capitol Hill. I got to tell you, this is a sea of humanity in here. This place is packed. People can't move alongside both sides of this reflecting pool, and I don't care what Fred Hickman said about Times Square. This city, the nation's capital, has nothing to be ashamed of. A lot more people showed up tonight than I think any of the planners had anticipated, given the relatively mild weather, the spectacular performance that's still ongoing right now, and it's about to culminate in about 20 minutes or so with a Steven Spielberg 18-minute film reflecting some of the accomplishments of the 20th century. But this crowd is really, really excited as they're getting ready for midnight. And we're told at midnight, the sound and light show, the fireworks that we're going to see here on the nation's capital, something that's never been seen before, despite the bicentennial, the inaugurations, the July 4th. This is going to be something very, very special tonight. Now, the performers have been singing all night. One of them was Don McLean, the songwriter of American Pie, 1971, that's become a classic. I had a chance to speak to Don McLean only a few minutes ago. Here's that interview.
I never thought I'd be around this long, so I'm, thrilled to still be around and still functioning reasonably well.
You know, so many of the performers have said the same thing. I've asked them, how do you feel about performing tonight? They've all been saying, well, we never thought we'd be here at the end of this millennium, at the beginning of the next.
If I can jump this millennium fence, I'm good for another 30 years.
Another 30 years would be good. What's happening in your life right now? Tell us about your performances.
Well, I have a wonderful PBS television special coming up in March, an hour and a half. That's a wonderful break with Garth Brooks and Nancy Griffith as my special guest. And I am recording and doing all kinds of one-nighters and just very busy with all kinds of business things, so I'm very happy.
You've never done anything is sort of like what you're doing tonight, participating in front of these thousands and thousands of people.
Well, the only thing that ever came close to this was when Garth Brooks had me as a guest at Central Park, which was one of the nicest things that ever happened to me in this business, and since then wonderful things have been happening. So
did you have a chance to meet the President and the First Lady?
Yes, I did. That was quite a wonderful experience as well. They treated us wonderfully, and we had a Millennium dinner, which I just came from. So I won't have any trouble remembering where I was when the century ended.
I don't think I'll have any trouble either. I don't think the hundreds of thousands of people...
I hope you get out alive.
Yeah, we'll get out, but thanks so much for joining us.
All right.
And Happy New Year.
Thank you.
And we're back here live here at the Washington Mall. This place is packed, excited, and probably among the most excited. We had a chance to spot him only a few minutes ago. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton. He was listening to John Fogerty, formerly of Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the President was rocking and rolling as they were singing a medley of very, very popular rock and roll songs. This place is simply packed. You see that 1999. It's going to turn eventually, of course, within the hour to the year 2000. Behind the Lincoln Memorial, we're going to see something that we've never seen in Washington before. We had a chance to speak to George Stevens Jr., who's one of the producers, together with Quincy Jones. They've produced a spectacular sound and light show. When you see at midnight what is going to be coming up behind the Lincoln Memorial, Times Square, and that crystal ball and all of that, that will prove to be modest compared to what the nation's capital has going. I don't know if Fred Hickman can hear me, but he'll be excited to see what's happening here in Washington. Bernie and Judy.
Wolf, are you excited or what?
Very excited over here.
If I didn't know better, Wolf Blitzer, I think you were trying to set up some kind of competition with Fred.
Fred Hickman, if you can hear me, get on a plane, take that shuttle to Washington.
Two guys, I think it's fair to say they're both covering a pretty special celebration. Well, as Bernie said a minute ago, in the political world, it's been very difficult to get Washington and Havana together, but we are going to do it right now. We're going to take you from Washington all the way to Havana, the capital of Cuba, to our own Lucia Newman. And Lucia, is it right that the Cuban government does not recognize a New Year's Eve, the New Year's holiday?
Good evening, Judy. Indeed, in Cuba, while the people do celebrate New Year's Eve, the coming of a new year, in this country, the bringing in of the new millennium will not occur officially until December 31st of next year, because they are going strictly by the Gregorian calendar. Now, as you can see, we're coming to you live from the Tropicana, Cuba's best-known nightclub, which was founded in 1939. The Tropicana is one of the few institutions to have survived in this country in a century that was marked by a revolution and economic upheaval. Most of the people here tonight, Judy and Bernie, are from other countries, people who came here to bring in the new millennium from a nation that many see as still being in many ways in the past. Cuba is the only country in the hemisphere which is still holding on firmly and proudly to communism, despite its demise in many, many other parts of the world. And speaking of differences, Cuba is one of the few countries where Y2K is not an obsession.
Ask many Cubans what they think about Y2K, and they're likely to answer, Y2 what?
¿Cómo?
What?
I don't know anything about it.
La verdad que no te sé decir nada.
To be honest, I don't understand it.
It's not so much due to an absence of information, but rather because most see the potential problems as irrelevant to them. The reason? The majority of Cubans have no access to the internet or even computers. And where they are used, their role is usually not critical.
El nivel de informatización de nuestra sociedad.
The level of computerization in our society is not at the level of more developed nations. That means that our main systems interact, giving accessory information to vital services. After collecting data, it is a human being that makes the final decisions.
In other words, in Cuba, the supply of water, electricity, and other utilities is controlled by people, not by computers. Cuban banks were using the same systems in vogue before the 1959 revolution until just 4 years ago, when they decided to automate.
The computers and programs available after 1994 in general deal adequately with the problem of the Y2K.
The same is true for Cuba's new international airports, which authorities say are free of the Y2K bug.
Cuba's Y2K Commission, in fact, has declared the country free of any major complications. Paradoxically, in fact, Cuba's relative tardiness in catching up with the technology of the 21st century has turned out to be, at least as far as Y2K is concerned, a blessing in disguise. Judy and Bernie?
Thank you, Lucia, for reporting from Havana, where it's 44 minutes and counting. And Bernie, when we come back, we're going to stop in on Las Vegas, a place where you might say the secular is king. But before we do, a quick glimpse of two places where the spiritual reigns supreme: sunrise over Bethlehem, sunrise over Jerusalem.
CNN's global coverage of Millennium 2000 is brought to you by Aflac. Without it, no insurance is complete.